Welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo. Today, I am joined by a member of Fireside Bears, Maxx Smith. You can follow him on Twitter at MaxSmithESM. And we're going to be talking about the Chicago Bears because the New York Giants do hold their first-round pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. They got that from the Justin Fields trade. Chicago went from 20 to 11, trading up with the New York Giants. Giants got their third-round pick next year and their first-round pick next year in return, plus a pick in this year's draft that they traded up later on to grab Aaron Robinson in the third round. But we want to know what's going on in Chicago. What's the season outlook? How are they looking right now? Are we confident in them? Are we looking at a top 10 pick, top 5, top 20? What are we looking at? So let's talk with Maxx, get an idea of where the Bears are right now and where they might be going. So, Maxx, how you doing and how are the Bears looking?
I'm personally doing great. I don't know so much about, the greatest organization in professional football, the Chicago Bears. I don't know about that one. They're definitely going through some interesting times in Hallis Hall, which is where we're located. I don't want to sound like I'm condescending, but I'm like trying to be genuinely. If you don't know anything about the Bears, I don't blame you. So I'm going to try to be as explanational and as like teacher as I can. I run over at Fireside Bears. So if you're interested in catching up on what the Bears are doing, check us out on YouTube, check us out on Twitter. We put out just about the same amount of content. We love you guys. You guys created us. We are your wonderful children, just like that first round pick is. And we'd like to say thank you for giving us the opportunity to draft Justin Fields. If you watch the preseason at all, if you watch SportsCenter, if you've watched Twitter, you know he's absolutely living up to his name. He had a fantastic preseason. But that wasn't enough to get him starting week 1 against the Los Angeles Rams because we have Mr. Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle himself, will be standing behind arguably one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. In fact, it's so bad when Tevin Jenkins we traded up to get him as well, fantastic talent, hurt his back. So we don't have a left tackle. Who do we go to? What 80-year-old Jason Peters off of the wires who new Nick Foles, which again, there's that weird Nick Foles, Matt Nagy connection. His beard looks fantastic. He played maybe 3 snaps the entire offseason. Looked like he was gassed after 2. He's a huge human being if you've ever seen him. And I'm sure you guys are familiar with him being the longtime Eagle that he is. He's over in Chicago now, and he will be starting on the line. I think he's 39 years old all in all. So we'll see how that goes. Our offensive line is nothing to be really proud of. We have about 2 good talents on there, James Daniel, Cody Whitehair. Cody Whitehair's been there for a while. James Daniel is one of Ryan Pace's first real good picks. And then we have a former practice squad member that I did a video breakdown on, Sam Mustipher, who actually is a bit of a talent. He played with Quentin Nelson at University of Notre Dame. We also have Alex Bars, who are Quentin Nelson teammates as well. So Giants fans, number 1, Andy Dalton will be starting. We do not know how long he will be starting. A lot of Bears fans and a lot of Bears commentators are speculating until week 4. My guess is much later. I don't think there is a push to win with this team. I really don't. And I mean this by 2 things. 1, the average age, the Chicago Bears, as of today, after roster cuts, and I'll dive into that, as the oldest roster in the NFL. We have, on average, the oldest roster in the NFL, right? It's not that good, and it's really expensive. So if there's 3 things that any NFL team should run away from, it's having an old, okay, the mediocre to bad, expensive roster. So we're not looking at a really good situation, but you'd think you'd like justify that. But hey, but guess what? We're a win-now team, right? It's okay if we're old. We're a win-now team. We're just going to win a Super Bowl, and then we'll go into a reconstruction year. We got our guy, Justin Fields. Let's keep him on the sideline. Let's get him some training. Let's get him beefed up for next year, and we'll rebuild with our guy, Justin Fields. I don't even know if that's the plan. I don't really know what's going on.
What do you think is the plan? Can you even make clear any type of plan with Matt Nagy and the Bears right now?
So here's what I speculated. I don't think the Bears for a million years thought that Justin Fields would fall into their lap. I think the relationship that Ryan Pace has with Dave Gettleman allowed him the opportunity to call him up and say, hey, this guy just fell into our lap. He likes Ryan Day and Matt Nagy. Ryan Day's the head coach at Ohio State. Have a working relationship together. Matt Nagy was there at Justin Fields' pro day. along with Kyle Shanahan. Shanahan, of course, went with his boy, Trey Lance, who, by the way, let me throw this aside. They both look fantastic. Out of all the quarterbacks, I know there's a lot of hype around Zach Wilson, but Trey Lance and Justin Fields look the best in preseason to me. And I think they're going to be compared step by step because their play style, which is great. So I think they didn't have a plan until they fell into their lap, because Justin Fields looked absolutely side like the Bears. And it was like, oh, he looks so happy to be with Chicago. He's been all over the city, by the way. He's 100 committed to Chicago. He's been at a Sox game. He's been at a Cubs game. He's been seen with like the Chicago Bulls players. He's been everywhere. So he's been loving the city. He's been living up in the lights. The city loves him. He's been great. I do not know what the plan is. I don't think there's anyone in Chicago that knows what the plan is. I don't even know if the insiders know what the plan is. It seems like we just were thrown a quarterback that we genuinely didn't think we were going to get, because we wouldn't have signed Andy Dalton. But remember, Andy Dalton is a 1-year deal for $10 million. It's a throwaway contract. It's okay, we need somebody to carry us over. I think the plan was we tank literally this year, and then we pick up a quarterback in this draft. So we weren't expecting any talent to fall our way. Pick 11 comes in. Let's take that if we can. Holy crap, we have Justin Fields on our roster now. We don't have the wide receivers to surround him with. We don't have the offensive line to protect him. We don't have the coaching staff really. So we have John DeFilippo, who's really close with Andy Dalton. We have Bill Lazor, who's really close with Andy Dalton. So I don't think we were prepared for Justin Fields. So from the Bears fan perspective, of course, we want to see him out the gate. We want to see him go out there. We want to see him win, because obviously no one likes watching their team lose. You know that very well over the past 2 years. Sorry for the dig. We're getting ready for it. I genuinely don't know.
Yeah, and you brought up a lot of good points there. The first one that I want to talk about, of course, because that's what everybody's most interested in, is, of course, the Justin Fields conversation. First, I want to ask you, what did you think of the compensation in that trade? Are you happy with what Chicago, now that you were here and the regular season is about to begin, right, and you're looking at Justin Fields maybe not even starting this year, you still happy with the first-round pick that they gave up, the third round, and I believe a fifth-round pick? You happy with that compensation so far?
Yes. So I think that there's everything was worth it for Justin Fields. And I think it's a little early still for me to say that, because we haven't seen him in the regular season. But I don't think you can put a price tag on a player as valuable as Justin Fields if he does pan out. If he turns out to be that, Patrick Mahomes-esque quarterback that we've seen him show shades of just in preseason. Of course, that's against backup guys that are even making the team. But the fact that he's still able to do that with professional level athletes, they're still in the NFL. They were brought on by teams for a reason, as compared to collegiate athletes that never even made a practice squad. There are shades of excellence there. There are shades of greatness there. So I don't think that it's easy, because I'll also say this, Ryan Pace, and I've told you this, and everyone that I've talked to, I say this all the time, Ryan Pace is nothing but a glorified scout. He's not a great GM, but he's a fantastic scout. And we have a great scouting department at the Bears.
That's how many people feel about Dave Gettleman as well.
Sure. And like that's one of the good a good quality of a GM is able to draft good players, right? Like obviously you need to be able to bring in new talent. Ideally, you'd like to be a good GM to retain new talent and do well in the free agency. That's just not our guy. Our guy is good at trades and he's good at scouting. So I shared this with you a couple hours ago, but just for those, because you don't know, in 2020, the Chicago Bears didn't have a first or a third round pick because we sent them to Oakland, which is now Las Vegas. Today is actually the 3rd anniversary of Khalil Mack being shipped to the Chicago Bears. So it's Happy Mack Day, Bears fans. That in 2020, we didn't have like any draft capital, but we had a couple of 5th round picks. So let me read this off to you. We had 2 2nd round picks, 3 5th round picks, and 2 7th round picks. That's all we had, right? Our 2 2nd round picks were Cole Kmet and Jalen Johnson. Cole Kmet is looking at a breakout year this year. He will be starting. Jalen Johnson's looking at a breakout year this year. He's our cornerback 1, by the way. He had a fantastic year amongst rookies last year. Our 5th round was Travis Gibson. He had the highest rating PFF rushing stats out of any player in the preseason for any defensive lineman. He had a terrible year last year, but he just came out of nowhere for preseason. He's a 5th round. He's going to be on the team. Kendall Vilder, he's basically cornerback 3. He was a 5th round pick. Darnell Mooney, he's looking for a breakout year. Chicago Bears fans love him. Arlington Hambright, round 7. He's going to be starting on the offensive line. So what's my point? Out of all of that draft capital in the 2nd, 5th, and 7th round, we have 4 starters on this team this year. So Ryan Pace knows what he's doing draft-wise. So whenever I see a Giants fan who's like, well, you don't have a first-round pick or you don't have a 3rd-round pick, I can list off the number of fingers in the past 10 years that we've had a first-round pick. Like, we don't have any. But here's the trade-off. Why are we the oldest team in the NFL? Because we don't have first-round picks. We don't have a bunch of draft capital every year. So what we've done as an organization is we've pushed ourselves into a corner and said, we have to win now. But we don't have the talent to win now. You're telling me that we're going to drop Kyle Fuller for Jimmy Graham when we have Cole Kmet, when we brought in Jesse James, who I think is a fantastic talent, who just needed to be surrounded by a good offense. Like, that's what I'm saying. So the answer is no. Long-winded answer is no. I am not upset with the trade. I think that the compensation is totally good. I think Justin Fields is a fantastic prize. I think any team that was looking for a quarterback would take him. And the Panthers came out and said their issue was epilepsy. And Justin Fields was like, well, I take a pill every morning and I'm fine. So, I mean, like, it's crazy to me to think that there are teams who pass on him. Like the Broncos could be living right now. Instead, they took Patrick Surtain, which, to their defense, Vic Fangio
looks great.
Ex-Bears defensive coordinator who got Kyle Fuller to follow him from Chicago, Bryce Callahan to follow him from Chicago. And now he has Surtain. That's one of the best secondaries in the NFL. Absolutely. With the best secondary coach in the NFL. So I get why they did that. But now they're rocking with Teddy Bridgewater over Justin Fields. It doesn't make any sense to me.
And this is a relevant conversation for the Giants as well, because we do face off against the Denver Broncos in 11 days here at the time of recording this. So that's very relevant because things could look a lot different. Our week 1 outlook could look much different if we were going up against a Justin Fields rather than a Teddy Bridgewater. So that is a pretty important thing to note. But your week 1 outlook is going to be pretty interesting, right? Because you have Andy Dalton starting. So we just talked about all that the Bears just invested into Justin Fields. But despite making this investment, they're not starting him in week 1. You guys are going to have to wait 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks. Who knows how long, right? And this is a win now team. And they want Andy Dalton in this throwaway contract that you mentioned to win right now. And granted, I'm actually not like that low on Andy Dalton. I do think he is a serviceable starter who can go out there and win you games. At the prime of his career, I thought he was an above average player who could get you to the playoffs every year, which he did for Cincinnati. Just once he got to the playoffs, he's not talented enough to win there. But that's fair. He's a serviceable starter. So to me, when I look at the Chicago Bears, the furthest they're going is the first round of the playoffs, absolutely furthest. I don't see any potential after that because of the Andy Dalton thing. But the lowest that they can go because of the Andy Dalton thing and this refusal to start Justin Fields, I literally do look at this team as being the most boom or bust, and the ceiling isn't even that high. But you guys really could bottom out for like a top 5 pick is the way I'm looking at it. But let's circle back around week 1. Quarterback is not Justin Fields. I actually support this decision from Matt Nagy, not from the Giants fan, evil conniving perspective that you assume, but personally, going up against the Los Angeles Rams week 1, Aaron Donald, this offensive line is god-awful right now. The last thing I want to do is throw out Justin Fields, just throw him into the Lions' den. That's not how I like to play. I think when you got this young quarterback, yeah, they might have went in with the initial plan of winning now, but really now I think they're pivoting to the long-term approach. Let's make sure Justin Fields is 100% ready, but that's where a lot of people are going to say he looks 100% ready after the preseason. So basically, want to get your take on that from the Chicago Bears fans' perspective, from the guy who covers the team for Fireside Bears. What are your thoughts on Andy Dalton week 1 over Justin Fields, and how long do you think it's going to take for Justin Fields to take the reins?
Yeah. So all great points, and I'm definitely going to cover my boom or bust, my ceiling after that. But that's a good point. I don't know if I 100% agree with you. I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible. But you're completely right about Andy Dalton. And I think that there's a lot of hate towards Andy Dalton because of his past couple of years, especially last year with Dallas, the unfortunate situation that happened to Dak Prescott. You have to throw Andy Dalton in there with an offensive scheme he's unfamiliar with. Not a great offensive scheme, to be honest, with a line that tore up Dak Prescott, a line that didn't allow Ezekiel Elliott to have success. So he was really just in a bad situation. He had good wide receiver talent with Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. He had a great, group of wide receivers, but you can't really do anything with that unless you have some time in the backfield and some, Zeke had a terrible year last year. So You're completely right, though. Back with the Bengals under Bill Lazor, Andy Dalton was a perennial, not a Super Bowl candidate, but Andy Dalton's Bengals were a perennial playoff team. They were always there. They were like, if you're familiar with basketball, the Chicago Bulls of the early 2010s and the late 2000s, they were basically in the playoffs every year. They weren't going to go to the finals. They didn't have enough talent to go to the finals, but they were good enough to get the playoffs every year. Or like Peyton Manning's Colts. Like maybe they lucked out to got to the Super Bowl, but like they were always in the playoffs, but you never really thought that they were going to be the Super Bowl team that would be walking away with it. So, and I'm not comparing Peyton Manning to Andy Dalton. I'm just saying that Andy Dalton had a good team around him, and he made some fantastic plays while he was a Bengal. So he definitely deserves his reputation of moderate tier. But there were conversations where we used to question if Andy Dalton was elite or not. Like back when we were like, well, there's Joe Flacco, there's Andy Dalton. Are they elite? Could we put those in the conversations with the Peyton Mannings, with the Tom Bradys, with the Phillip Rivers,
with the Eli Mannings,
and with the Eli Manning? Sure, that he was in that conversation too, and he's much better than Joe Flacco and Andy Dalton, in my opinion. But that, yeah, for sure, that's like 100% something that people have to remember. And so when Justin Fields should start, Matt Nagy is stuck in Kansas City. I'll say this flat out. A lot of Bears fans know the same thing. He is stuck in Kansas City. Every time he talks about anything, it always has to relate back to Andy Reid. It has to relate back to Kansas City. So he keeps saying we're going to follow the Kansas City model, which is we have our veterans, Alex Smith was in Kansas City to what Andy Dalton will be in Chicago. Again, a good, serviceable quarterback who will get you wins you could play off of, but he won't really take you very far. Andy Dalton, you can get wins, serviceable quarterback. Who's below both of them? Justin Fields under Andy Dalton, Pat Mahomes under Alex Smith. Let's give them a year. Let's teach them the offense. Let's give them a year. Let's have them stand behind their guy who's ready. Of course, there's so much flack for Kansas City because they said, well, Patrick Mahomes is my guy. We're going to stick with Patrick Mahomes. Alex Smith is gone. We gave you a winning season. You did incredibly well that year with Alex Smith. So what are you going to do with Patrick Mahomes? Well, we're going to start him. Okay. Are they going to do the same with the Bears? I don't know if we're going to. We could even see, honestly, we could see a Tua situation where we're winning, and they just might decide to go ahead and put Justin Fields in there because, well, he's ready.
Right.
I don't know.
One thing with that situation, I'll say, is that's actually what the Giants did with Eli Manning in his rookie season. The Giants were destined to go to the playoffs with Kerry Collins as their quarterback, and they said, no, we're putting in the rookie Eli Manning. It's his time. He looks ready. They just wanted to wait until he was ready. He goes out there. Team barely wins. They miss the playoffs. But I really like what you bring up here with the Kansas City model, and I do think that that's a route that the Bears are going to go potentially. Not necessarily sure if they're going to go with Alex Smith Andy Dalton throughout the full regular season, but it really does remind me of that situation because that Chiefs team was very good. Alex Smith got them to the playoffs. And they didn't make it very far in the playoffs, similar to how Andy Dalton was in the prime of his career, getting to the playoffs but not making it far. But then they go ahead, they trade Alex Smith, and they start Patrick Mahomes because he was fully ready after waiting a full year, and then he takes the league by storm that season. So that could potentially be the scenario that we see play out with the Chicago Bears and with Justin Fields, and it's why I'm saying, yeah, I think Fields looks amazing right now in the preseason. Patrick Mahomes looked amazing in his preseason as well, but is that going to push Chicago to put him in the starting lineup, or are they really going to stick true to that Kansas City model? That's the question. And another thing that I'll add on as well, sorry to cut you off, but I do remember in Daniel Jones's rookie season, Dave Gettleman actually said the exact same thing. He said we can go with the Aaron Rodgers model, right? He sat for 3 years before he started. He said because he was like, Eli Manning still has stuff left in the tank. And then he said towards the start of the regular season, he said, we want to go with the Kansas City model. We want Eli Manning to start this whole year. Well, Daniel Jones started in week 3, and that was all she wrote. So it could be the same thing with the Bears.
We in Chicago 100% know that you can say one thing and do something completely different. That's, we're not a transparent front office. Bears never been. It's just how it's run, which I hate, but it is what it is. It makes speculating fun. I'd like to address something because this is the number one thing that people say, and I somewhat agree with it, but I also don't. I was at first worried about throwing Justin Fields to the fire and having Aaron Donald and Brandon Staley's Rams defense. Brandon Staley, by the way, under the Vic Fangio tree, was at Chicago with the outside linebacking coach before he hopped over to the LA Rams. Sorry, he's with the Chargers. My bad. I'm sorry. My bad. He was with the Rams. He was the defensive coordinator with the Rams. I get them mixed up because they're both in LA. Why did they have to do that? I used to be a San Diego Chargers fan. No, I'm not. I refuse to be an LA Chargers fan. I have a San Diego Chargers jersey. Shout out Junior Say RIP. So what we're looking at with the Rams is we're looking at a tough defensive line, absolutely. But here's my thing. Justin Fields is going to be on the practice squad. He's going to be running the practice squad. Matt Nagy has said as much. He's going up against starters for the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears front five, front seven are nothing to be, nothing to make fun of. You were talking about Akeem Hicks. We're talking Khalil Mack. We're talking Robert Quinn. Sure, he's old, but we're talking about Travis Gibson, who had a fantastic offseason. We're talking Khyiris Tonga, who, if you didn't watch him during the preseason, but if you did, he was throwing starting centers to the ground. He's just a huge man. So we're not looking at people who are complete pushovers. Justin Fields will be going against, top 15. I think this defense is underrated. I have serious issues about the secondary depth. But I still think we have one of the best linebacking cores and one of the best defensive lines in the league, bar none. So he's going to be looking at those guys 5 days a week, 4 days a week, and he's going to be running around for his life against these guys with that practice squad offensive line. So regardless of where you play him or not, he's going to take hits. He's going to face contact. He's going to face top, mid to top tier caliber defense. What a lot of fans are saying is week 4. Wait until week 4. We're going to see him week 4. Week 4 is against the Detroit Lions. Of course, that's what fans are going to say, because that's the earliest game where we could potentially have a blowout. We want to see, so our week 1 is against the Rams. Week 2 is against the Bengals. So we want to see the Andy Dalton revenge game. Week 3 is against the Browns. So we're afraid to see Myles Garrett rip Justin Fields' head off or maybe hit him with the helmet. Who knows? And then week 4 is the Lions. So we'd rather see Justin carve up the Lions. And here's why I'm saying we won't be a top 5 pick is because we share a division with the Lions. We can get, it's 2 free wins right there. You could put this on Twitter at Freezing Cold Take. Come back and yell at me if we lose to the Lions. We will not lose to this Lions team. They have like no talent there. It's actually sad.
They look like they could be the team that does the only team to ever go 0-16 twice, right? But this time
they might. Like legitimately they might. I think they're gonna at least get maybe 2 wins. But oh my Lord, their talent is just not. They have like maybe 2 or 3 guys that I think could make it on another team. But it's sad. And then we have one of the toughest schedules, by the way. If you didn't know that, we do. Our DVOA is one of the toughest in the league. We're playing the Buccaneers again. We're playing the Steelers. We're playing the Ravens. We're playing the 49ers. We play the Packers twice, which I've hated since I was a kid because Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre has always been there. We play the Seahawks. We play you guys, which will be a really interesting game right after New Year's, January 2nd. We're playing the Browns. We're playing the Steelers. I don't know if I said that already. So we're playing ridiculous passing offenses. We're playing really tough defenses. My biggest concern about this defense is our secondary. We're playing against some of the best quarterbacks in the league the entire year, and we're supposed to come out on top from this. I don't know. I'm not optimistic enough to say that this team makes the playoffs, even with Justin Fields behind center. I really don't think we make the playoffs. But I also don't think that we're a top 5, top 10 team. I think we're probably going to come in around like 11, honestly, which would be funny. You guys get your pick back. But I think that's kind of me as an unbiased opinion and evaluation of this team is it's sad. There are some really talented players on this team who are in positions in their career that they have to win now or else they're never going to win. And I just don't think it's going to happen. Allen Robinson is gone after this year. He's going to hit the market. We're going to see Akeem Hicks probably be gone. I don't even know if a team will sign him. He's old. We might trade him away. Nick Foles will probably be gone by the time this video goes up. Before week 1, Nick Foles will be off the roster for sure. Trades are inbound. So, yeah, I am not that all optimistic. But you as Giants fans should be excited that you do have an extra first-round pick that will probably be under 15. I'll just say that.
Okay. I mean, that's a pretty good outlook from the Giants' perspective. From the Bears' perspective, though, obviously not as exciting. I know that you mentioned there's a lot of depth concerns in the secondary. Of course, their defense that front seven is incredible. Again, holes in the secondary might come back to bite the team. But if the team does make it to the playoffs, it's likely going to be on the backs of that defensive front. From Khalil Mack, from Akeem Hicks, kind of making this last run with Akeem Hicks, as you mentioned. I know that there was some discussion at one point that he might retire. So that's kind of his last push. He wants this to be the win now team that it was first billed to be, right? So, but then you take a look at the offensive side of the ball. Yeah, I love the playmaking group that you have. Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney. I'm high on Darnell Mooney. I really like the group of guys that you have there, but same thing with the Giants. I love their group of playmakers, but that offensive line is going to wreck the season if they don't fix it, and it's too late now. Regular season starts in 10 days. So that's kind of the struggle there with the Chicago Bears. When I look at this team, I actually do think if Andy Dalton plays like that really high-level Andy Dalton, or if Justin Fields comes in and looks like a good rookie quarterback, which you have to keep in mind, good rookie quarterbacks, historic rookie quarterbacks are one thing, but a good rookie quarterback is like a slightly above average starting quarterback in the NFL, like a veteran. So if Justin Fields comes in and plays like that, to me, the ceiling is first round of the playoffs exit. And that's like the ultimate ceiling.
To Justin's defense, just to hop in there, we've never seen him with starters yet. We haven't seen him throw game time scenarios in the preseason with Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, Jimmy Graham, Cole Kmet. We didn't see it. We just didn't. So you're right. He could be great with the playmakers that he has around him, but I seriously don't. I'm not even that bullish on our playmakers, honestly.
Wow. Well, I know you're a big fan of Cole Kmet, though. I like him as well. I do see the breakout season. I envision that for him. I think that could be a strong possibility. Plus, if you remember, we looked at some Justin Fields film over the summer. Justin Fields does like to utilize that tight end position. He was very comfortable throwing to that position at Ohio State. And I think that's going to be something long-term when you're looking at this team. Talking about that Justin Fields to Cole Kmet connection, you want to strengthen that and build with that right there. I think that's going to be important for them. But talking about this season, because this is the one the Giants fans care about, and this is a Giants channel, I'm going to go ahead and give my prediction basically and say that I think that this pick could be as high as top 20 because I do think there's a chance they make it to the final seed in the playoffs. It seems like they're always hanging around there anyway. They're always just fighting for that final spot, Chicago. I don't know what it is, but it always seems like they're there. So I'm going to say I think they can make the playoffs. It is the division, absolutely. They can make the playoffs, but realistically, this is a team that I don't see winning more than 6 games, especially the way you lay it out. There's so many holes in certain spots, and there is so much uncertainty. You even mentioned, alluded to it, the coaching staff. There's some uncertainty there. You know me personally. I hate Matt Nagy. I think he's an awful coach, and he holds your team back, and it pisses me off to see that happen all the time because I just hate seeing goal line fades and stuff like that. I'm a big anti-goal line fade guy, but just getting into it. For me, this offseason outlook for them, I thought they did have a good offseason for the future. But for this year, I think the Chicago Bears offseason didn't do them any favors. For the future, it did, absolutely. So I'm going to say I think this is a 5-6 win team.
Yeah, and I'll just say if I see another triple option in the red zone at the 10-yard line, I'm going to scream, even if it is Justin Fields. That's just setting him up for failure. The Giants should comfortably have, and I think that's a good thing that it'd be so late or such early of a pick because I don't see the Giants. I think there's no excuse for the Giants to miss the playoffs this year. I legitimately believe that. I think the Giants have done they have probably had one of the best off seasons in my opinion, just bringing in talent to surround Daniel Jones. Yeah, you mentioned there's issues with the offensive line, but from an outside perspective, I look at Sterling Shep. I think he's going to have a great year. I think bringing in guys like Kenny Golladay was a fantastic pick. We tried to bring him in because we weren't sure if Allen Robinson was going to take his franchise tender or not, or if we are going to let him walk or trade him. Kadarius Toney was a fantastic pick. I know there's some injury worries there that I read about, which sucks.
He hasn't practiced at all. We don't even know if he's going to play in week 1. There's a lot of question marks around him, but
but he's a good, talented player, which is good. Agreed. Kyle Rudolph, I've watched him carve up Bears secondary for a long time. And then I don't like Evan Ingram, so I'm not even going to talk about him. But he's a body that stretches the field. So, right. He stretches the field, which makes he's a deep ball tight end threat if he could actually catch the ball. But he scares secondaries, and he definitely peels off. He makes guys open, which is good to have. You guys should definitely have a higher pick. So you could capitalize on that. Whatever issues on the offensive line, you can use to utilize that. But I mean, with that being said, I don't know if I disagree with you on a pick that low. I mean, the Bears fan inside of me is saying, oh, we'll go 8-9 or 9-8. Matt Nagy, remember, hasn't coached a losing season yet, so this could be his first. He went 12-4, and then we went 8-8 2 years in a row. So he hasn't had a losing season yet. So hopefully nothing changes. But best case scenario, Justin Fields comes out of nowhere and proves everybody what we already knew, that he's special and he's able to win games. And we won 2 games with him in the preseason. I don't see why we couldn't win games in the regular season. I know it's not the same thing, but that's me being biased. But yeah, for sure, if you're a Giants fan, just keep an eye on, Bear scores at the ticker, and just know that the worse we do, the better chances you guys get at a pick, or a good pick. And yeah, I mean, I'm interested in just seeing what the Giants do from an NFC perspective. It's looking good. I don't really think there should be anything in the division holding you guys back, except for a pissed off Dak Prescott who wants a revenge tour. But I think that's the only thing in your guys' way in the win column. Your schedule doesn't look that hard outside of a rendezvous with the Chiefs and us. So
yeah, in frigid Chicago in January, that'll be a lot of fun if I do end up making the trip over there with you. But anyway, I guess that really summarizes it all. That's your outlook on the upcoming Chicago Bears season. We really did recap the majority of this offseason, really laid the foundation of what this team looks and hopes to be. So going forward, it's going to be a fun 2021 season. I'm hyped. You're hyped. We've got 11 days till our teams kick off from this recording date. So it's going to be a fun one. And I do plan on making this a series on this channel so we can keep up with the Bears throughout the regular season, know where they are. If we get to week 5 and you guys are 0-5, best believe, Max, we're going to be sitting down. We're going to be talking about that. So
I'm just going to be yelling the entire time.
Yep, it's going to be angry Max Smith as he gets pissed off at Matt Nagy and the Bears at that point.
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe you guys are 5-0, and then we're talking about this in a completely different light.
And I'll still be pissed off.
Right, because it'd probably be Andy Dalton playing all 5 of those games, right?
Yep.
Yeah, but we'll look into this. We're going to keep revisiting this throughout the season. I know this first-round pick is really important to Giants fans. So, of course, Max, thank you for joining me for this. Everybody, make sure you follow Max on Twitter at MaxSmithESM. Go check out Fireside Bears. You can keep up with them throughout the season, whether you're a Giants fan or a Bears fan. Keep up with them throughout the season. You'll know where they might be picking, what the team's doing, how they're playing, and all of that. So they provide you with the same level of content that we do over here on Fireside Giants. So thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss a video. We'll see you in the next one. And let's go Giants.
If you hate the Packers, sub the Fireside Bears. We'll take you.
Sub the Fireside Bears as well. Let's go Giants.
Bear down.